I'm Colleen, 27 years old. For 18 months, my parents told every employer in our county that I was a thief. It didn't matter that I graduated near the top of my class in architecture. It didn't matter that 3 professors wrote glowing recommendations. None of that mattered because my father made phone call after phone call telling anyone who would listen that his own daughter had stolen from the family business. My father said, "You'll come crawling back when you're hungry enough." He thought 18 months of rejection would break me. He thought watching me work the graveyard shift at a gas station while my brother laughed would finally teach me obedience. But he didn't know about the envelope. He didn't know what my grandmother had done 12 years ago, or why the founding partner of the city's most prestigious architecture firm had been waiting for someone named Colleen Hargrove to walk through his door. My grandmother didn't just prepare my escape, she prepared something they never saw coming. Before we go any further, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly resonate with you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now, and what time is it there? Share it in the comments. Now, let me take you back 18 months to the day I discovered what my own parents had done to me. The Hargrove family looked perfect from the outside. My father, Warren Hargrove, ran the most successful real estate brokerage in our county. People in Millhaven knew his name before they knew their own neighbors. Our house sat on 4 acres at the edge of town. Red brick, white columns, a curved driveway lined with oak trees my great-grandfather had planted, 3 cars always in the garage, my father's black Mercedes, my mother Suzanne's pearl white Cadillac, and my brother Bennett's charcoal BMW, a gift for completing his business degree, celebrated at a dinner where my father stood and toasted his son's bright future, while I sat at the far end of the table, passing the bread basket. My mother had perfected the role of the gracious wife. Charity boards, church committees, a smile that never wavered in public. At home, she was quieter, always adjusting, always smoothing, always making sure nothing disrupted my father's mood. And Bennett, 3 years older, the heir, the son who would carry the Hargrove name into the next generation. My father had groomed him since childhood. Site visits at 12, client dinners at 16, a corner office waiting before he'd even graduated. Everything Bennett touched was an investment in the family legacy. Everything I touched was an inconvenience. When Bennett wanted to attend an elite business program across the country, my father wrote the check without hesitation. When I brought home information about an architecture summer intensive 2 years later, he barely glanced at it. Architecture? He almost laughed. That's a hobby, Colleen, not a career. Not for you. I went to the state university 40 minutes away, commuted from home, worked harder than anyone in my program because I had something to prove, mostly to myself. I won a regional design competition my junior year. My father didn't attend the ceremony. He was playing golf with clients. At family dinners, the conversation always centered on Bennett, his projects, his promotions, his future. I sat at the end of the table, refilling water glasses, listening to my father's voice rise with pride whenever he looked at his son. "A man builds his legacy with vision and nerve," my father liked to say, gesturing toward Bennett with his fork. "That's what separates the Hargroves from everyone else." He never gestured toward me. He barely looked at me at all. I wasn't abused in those years. Not yet. I was something more invisible. Present but not encountered. Fed but not nourished. A daughter who existed in the margins of a family portrait that only had room for sons. But someone noticed. Someone had been watching for years, cataloging every dismissal, every slight, every time my father looked through me like I was made of glass. She didn't confront him. She was too smart for that. Instead, she prepared. Quietly. Legally, with the kind of foresight that only comes from a woman who had seen exactly what her son-in-law was capable of and knew what he would eventually do to her granddaughter. I just didn't know it yet. That's when I'd learned my grandmother had one secret ready. The only person who ever made me feel visible was my grandmother. Lorraine Thiebaud wasn't warm in the way people expect grandmothers to be. She didn't bake pies or knit sweaters. She was precise, observant, and she'd built everything she had from nothing. A single commercial property purchased in 1971 with money she'd saved working as a legal secretary. By the time she retired, she owned 6 buildings across the county and had a reputation for deals that made grown men nervous. She sold most of her holdings at 65, kept 2 properties she never talked about, and spent her remaining years in a modest house at the edge of town with a garden full of roses and a library full of books on business, law, and history. I spent summers with her when I was young. Her house smelled like cedar and bergamot. While other kids learned to swim or ride bikes, I learned to read lease agreements. She showed me how compound interest could turn small amounts into fortunes over decades. She quizzed me on contract language when I was barely tall enough to reach her kitchen table. "Knowledge is the only inheritance no one can steal from you, Colleen," she'd say, tapping her finger against whatever document she was teaching me to read. "Everything else can be taken, but what's in here," she'd tap her temple, "that's yours forever." She was careful around my father, polite at holidays, pleasant at birthday dinners. But I noticed things. The way her expression hardened when he interrupted me. The way her eyes tracked him when he praised Bennett and ignored my existence. She never confronted him directly. That wasn't her way. But she saw him. Every version of him, every cruelty he disguised as discipline. One summer evening, I was 15, we sat on her porch, watching the sun drop behind the tree line. She reached over and took my hand. Her grip was firm, almost urgent. "Colleen," she said quietly, "I need you to remember something." I looked at her. Something in her expression made the air feel heavier. "I've already put something in place for you," she said, "for your future. When the day comes, and it will come, you'll have what you need." "What do you mean, Grandma? Put what in place?" She smiled, but her eyes stayed serious. "Your father believes he controls everything in this family. He's wrong. There are things he doesn't know about, things he can't touch." I was 15. I thought she was being dramatic. Maybe she'd set aside some money for my college. Maybe she was talking about her will. I had no idea she was talking about survival. 3 years ago, Grandma Lorraine passed away. She was 81. A stroke in the middle of the night. No warning, no goodbye. I drove to the hospital at 3 a.m. and held her hand, but she was already gone. After the funeral, my father handled everything. He gathered the family in the living room and summarized her estate like he was reading a quarterly report. "She left most of it to charity," he said, flipping through papers without looking up. "A few sentimental gifts for the grandchildren. Nothing significant." He shrugged. "Lorraine was always more generous with strangers than with family." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. He was handling the legal documents. I had no reason to think he'd lie about something like that. But he had. He'd found something in her estate meant for me, and he'd buried it so deep I wouldn't find it another 18 months. Not until I had nothing left. Not until I finally understood what she'd meant on that porch. She hadn't been dramatic. She'd been 12 years ahead of everyone else. The summer before my senior year, my father offered me a job at his development firm. Filing, answering phones, helping coordinate site documentation. "It'll look good on your resume," he said. "Show people you understand real business, not just sketches and models." I took the job because I wanted his approval. That was my first mistake. On my second day, he handed me a company credit card. "For office supplies," he said. "Whatever you need to keep things organized. Don't go crazy." Over 2 months, I charged just under $500. Printer paper, drafting supplies, filing folders, binders for client presentations. I kept every receipt in a folder organized by date, a habit I'd learned from my grandmother. Document everything. At the end of the summer, he called me into his office. $500? He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. That's a lot of supplies, Colleen. I gave you the card. I have all the receipts. I didn't authorize that level of spending. His voice flattened. You helped yourself to company money without permission. That's theft. The word landed like a punch to the chest. I paid back every dollar within 4 months, working weekends at a campus print shop. Kept the payment confirmations. Every one. I thought it was over. I thought he'd forget. That was my second mistake. A year later, I graduated. Near the top of my class, 3 professors wrote recommendation letters. One of them called me the most creative structural thinker I've mentored in 15 years. At my graduation dinner, my father made his offer. Come work at the firm, he said. Unpaid for the first year. You'll live at home, help your mother with things around the house, learn how real development works so you can support Bennett when he takes over. Unpaid. Housekeeper. Support for my brother. I appreciate it, Dad, I said carefully, but I'd like to try finding something on my own first, get some outside experience. The table went quiet. My mother studied her plate. Bennett smirked into his wine glass. My father nodded slowly. Fine, he said. Try it your way. He went back to cutting his steak. The conversation moved on. I didn't realize that quiet fine was the beginning of a war I didn't know I was fighting. The rejection started within weeks. 11 applications, 11 interviews, 11 polite emails that all said the same thing. We've decided to pursue other candidates. Firms that had shaken my hand warmly, praised my portfolio, asked when I could start. Then, silence. On my 12th interview, a woman at a small design consultancy paused mid-conversation and looked at me with something that wasn't professional. It was pity. Miss Hargrove, she said slowly, you're clearly talented, but I think you need to speak with your father. My father? Why? She pressed her lips together. I can't say more, just ask him why no one in this county will hire you. I drove home with my hands trembling on the wheel. That night, I found him in his study, whiskey in hand, leather chair creaking. Why can't I get a job, Dad? He looked up, and he smiled. Because I told them the truth, he said, that you're a thief, that you stole from the family business. I paid that back, every cent, you know. That's not how I remember it. Dad, my voice cracked. Why would you do this to me? Because you needed to learn respect. He stood and walked toward me, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You thought you could make it without this family, without me. He paused. Maybe now you understand. You can't. My mother appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, tight. Warren, maybe we should... Stay out of this, Suzanne. She flinched. Her eyes met mine for 1 second. Guilt, sorrow, something drowning behind glass. And then she looked away, walked back down the hallway, back into 30 years of silence. He was a monster. She was a witness who chose not to see. Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone who was supposed to protect you and realized they were the one holding you under? That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how to survive in a county where my own father had locked every door. I didn't know yet that somewhere in this city, a man I'd never met was holding an envelope with my name on it, sealed 12 years ago by a woman who had loved me enough to see the future. But I was a long way from finding it. In a small town, gossip moves faster than truth. Within weeks of my father's campaign, I felt the shift everywhere I went. At the grocery store, neighbors who'd known me since childhood suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. At church, conversations stopped mid-sentence when I walked past. The woman at the pharmacy who used to ask about my studies started treating me like a stranger, polite, distant, careful. The whispers followed me like shadows. Did you hear about Warren's daughter? Such a shame. Stole from her own family. They tried to help her, you know. She just wouldn't listen. My father had been strategic. He hadn't just called employers. He'd seeded the story through his entire network. Golf partners, Chamber of Commerce colleagues, neighbors at dinner parties. The narrative was always the same. Troubled daughter, theft problem, family heartbroken but trying to cope. He never lied outright. He just told his version. And in a county where Hargrove Development had built half the commercial properties, his version was the only one anyone believed. Bennett made it worse. I ran into him at a coffee shop one morning, one of the few places I could still go without feeling watched. He was with two friends from his MBA program. When he saw me, his face lit up with something cruel. "Hey, little sister," he called out, loud enough for the entire shop to hear. "Still looking for work? Dad might have an opening in the mailroom. Oh, wait." He laughed. "You'd probably steal the stamps." His friends snickered. The barista looked away. I left my coffee on the counter and walked out, face burning. That night, I looked at my bank account. $800. Rent was due in 10 days. I had maybe 6 weeks before I'd be completely broke. 6 weeks before I'd have no choice but to crawl back to my father's house and accept whatever terms he dictated. I couldn't let that happen. The Crossroads gas station sat on the highway at the edge of town, far enough from the center of Millhaven that most people I knew never stopped there. The sign in the window said, "Night shift available, no experience necessary." I applied at 11 p.m., filled out the paperwork under fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. The manager was a man named Doug, mid-50s, with tired eyes and a coffee-stained polo shirt. He looked at my application, then at me. "Architecture degree?" he said flatly. "And you want to work the graveyard shift at a gas station?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" I could have invented something, a story about flexible hours, about saving for graduate school, but I was so tired of lies. "Because no one else will hire me," I said, "and I need to eat." He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Shift starts at 10, ends at 6. Minimum wage plus $1 for overnight differential. You pump gas, stock shelves, and don't steal from the register." He slid a name tag across the counter. "Don't be late." I took the name tag with hands that weren't quite steady. "Thank you. I won't let you down." He almost smiled. "We'll see." 3 weeks into the job, my family found me. It was a Saturday night, just past midnight. I was restocking the cooler when I heard the bell over the door chime, followed by a laugh I'd know anywhere. Bennett's laugh. I froze, hidden behind a shelf of motor oil, and peered through the gap. My father was walking toward the counter, wearing a cashmere coat I'd never seen before. My mother trailed behind him, clutching her purse like a shield, and Bennett was already scanning the store, looking for something to mock. His eyes found me. "Well, well," he said, loud enough for the entire shop to hear. "Dad, Mom, look who's working the night shift." My father turned. His face split into a grin I will never forget. "Colleen." He walked toward me slowly, savoring every step. "The gas station. This is where you ended up?" I stood there in my polyester uniform, name tag crooked, holding a case of energy drinks. My mother's face flickered with something. Shame, maybe, or the ghost of the woman she used to be, but she said nothing. "Now," my father said, raising his voice so the other customer at the pump could hear. "You'll finally understand what happens when you disrespect this family." Bennett pulled out his phone. "Hold on, I need a picture of this. The architecture graduate pumping gas. Classic." Something cracked inside me, but I didn't cry. I didn't run. I set down the drinks, looked my father in the eye, and said the only thing I could. "Can I help you with anything tonight, sir? Or are you just here to browse?" His smile faltered, just for a second. Then he laughed, shook his head, and walked out without buying anything. My mother followed. Bennett snapped his photo and left last, still laughing. I stood alone in the fluorescent glare, shaking, but still standing. If you know someone who's been made to feel small by the people who should have lifted them up, share this with them, and comment Team Colleen if you're still with me. That night, something hardened in my chest. I remembered what my grandmother had said on her porch 12 years ago. When the day comes, you'll have what you need. I wondered if that day was close. 2 weeks after the gas station humiliation, I overheard something I was never meant to hear. I'd been picking up extra shifts whenever Doug offered them. The money was barely enough, but it kept the lights on. That Thursday, I'd agreed to cover a day shift for a coworker who'd called in sick, which meant I was behind a counter at 2 p.m. when I should have been sleeping. The Crossroads had a small storage room in the back, and the ventilation system was old, poorly designed. Sound traveled through the ducts in strange ways. I'd learned to ignore most of it, the rumble of trucks, muffled conversations from the pumps. But that afternoon, I heard my father's name. I crept toward the vent, pressing my ear against the metal grating. "I'm telling you, Warren, it's perfect timing." A voice I didn't recognize. Older, gruff. "Your daughter's situation and my son's needs. We can help each other." "She is almost ready." My father's voice, confident and smooth. "Another few months of this, and she'll agree to anything." "She knows about the arrangement?" "Not yet, but she will, when she's desperate enough." My blood went cold. "So what are we talking about?" the other man continued. "An engagement?" "A strategic alliance." My father's tone was businesslike, like he was discussing a land deal. "My daughter marries your son. Your son gets a wife with a good education who'll keep her mouth shut. I get access to your firm's coastal development contracts. Everyone wins. Except her?" A pause. Then my father laughed. "She'll learn to appreciate it. Daughters always do, once they realize they don't have options." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold floor of the storage room, surrounded by boxes of chips and motor oil, my heart hammering against my ribs. He wasn't just trying to control my career. He was planning to sell me, a business arrangement sealed with his daughter's future. I thought about my grandmother's words. "Your father believes he controls everything in this family. He's wrong." I didn't know what she'd left me. I didn't know how to find it. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I could not stay in this town, no matter what it cost me. That night, I started applying to firms in other cities, places far enough that the Hargrove name meant nothing. The applications felt hopeless. I had an 18-month gap in my employment history and references I couldn't use, but I sent them anyway. 14 applications, 14 silences. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I found something that changed everything. I was packing up my apartment, preparing for the eviction I could no longer avoid, when I found the book. It was wedged behind my dresser, an old hardcover I'd forgotten I owned. Fundamentals of Architectural Design, a textbook from my sophomore year. I almost threw it in the donation pile without opening it. But something made me flip through the pages. Halfway through the book, tucked between chapters on structural integrity, I found a birthday card. The envelope was yellowed, unsealed. On the front, in handwriting I would recognize anywhere, were the words, "For Colleen on your 15th birthday. Open when you need direction. Grandma Lorraine." I'd never seen this card. I'd never opened it. She must have slipped it into my textbook during one of my visits, knowing I'd find it eventually, maybe years later, maybe when I needed it most. My hands trembled as I pulled out the card. Inside, her handwriting was neat and deliberate. My dearest Colleen, if you're reading this, then you've reached a crossroads. I won't be there to guide you in person, but I've left you a path. Go to Callaway and Whitmore Architecture in the city. Ask for the founding partner, Theodore Whitmore. Tell him your grandmother sent you. He has something that belongs to you, something your father cannot touch. I love you more than you know. Trust yourself. Grandma. I read it 3 times. 4. Theodore Whitmore, Callaway and Whitmore, the most prestigious architecture firm in 3 counties. I'd applied there months ago and never heard back. I'd assumed my father's calls had reached them too. But my grandmother had known this man, known him well enough to entrust him with something. I grabbed my phone and searched for the law firm that had handled my grandmother's estate. The number was still in my old emails. A receptionist answered. Garrett and Monroe, how may I help you? I'm calling about the estate of Lorraine Thibault. I'm her granddaughter, Colleen Hargrove. I have some questions about the will. A pause. Keyboard clicking. I see the file here. Let me just... Another pause. Oh, I see a note. What note? It says... She hesitated. It says the family representative, a Mr. Warren Hargrove, contacted our office 3 years ago. He indicated that the beneficiary declined further correspondence regarding certain assets. My blood turned to ice. I never declined anything, I said, my voice barely steady. I never spoke to anyone from your office. A long silence. I'm very sorry, ma'am. I'm just reading what's in the file. It says my father lied. She didn't respond. Is there anything else in the file? Anything about property or a trust or... I'm not authorized to share details over the phone, but, she lowered her voice, if you have reason to believe the original instructions were misrepresented, you might want to contact Theodore Whitmore directly. His name appears in several of the documents. I hung up, shaking. My father had intercepted my grandmother's estate. He told the lawyers I didn't want it. He'd buried whatever she'd left me so deep that I'd never find it, never know it existed. But Grandma had anticipated that too. She hid a second path, a name and a birthday card tucked inside a textbook, waiting for the day I'd need it. What was inside that envelope Theodore Whitmore was holding? What was the one secret my grandmother had kept ready for 12 years? Keep watching, because what I found changed everything. The night before I left for the city, I stayed awake until 3 a.m. packing a single bag. I didn't have much. A secondhand blazer I'd found at a thrift store, black slacks with a small stain on the hem I hoped no one would notice, my only pair of heels, scuffed at the toes but presentable if no one looked too close, my architecture portfolio, the one I'd built during college, the only proof I had that I was more than a gas station attendant with a ruined reputation. Doug had given me 2 days off without question. Go do what you need to do, he'd said, pressing a crumpled 20 into my hand. You don't belong here, Colleen. You never did. I cried in the break room. He'd pretended not to notice. I took a bus because I couldn't afford anything else. 4 hours through farmland and strip malls, watching the landscape shift from everything I knew to everything I hoped might save me. When the city skyline appeared on the horizon, my phone rang. Dad. My thumb hovered over the ignore button, but something made me answer. Maybe hope that things could still change. Maybe the need to hear him try one more time so I could finally let go. Colleen. His voice was warm. Too warm. How are you? Fine, Dad. Listen, I've been thinking. This has gone on long enough. Your mother misses you. I miss you. I stared out the bus window at the approaching towers of glass and steel. Come home, he continued. Work at the company. I'll pay you this time. Not much at first, but something. You'll live with us, save money, get back on your feet. It almost sounded reasonable. Almost. And the job situation? I asked. The things you told everyone about me? Water under the bridge. Come home and I'll make some calls. Clear things up. And if I don't? I asked. His tone shifted. The warmth drained out like someone had pulled a plug. Then you can keep pumping gas until you wise up. Your choice. I closed my eyes. I need to think about it, I said. Don't think too long. This offer won't last forever. A pause. Oh, and Colleen, I know you're on a bus right now. I know exactly where you're going. My blood went cold. Bennett tracked your location. Very careless, leaving your phone's GPS on. His voice hardened. I've already called ahead. Theodore Whitmore is an old acquaintance. He'll listen to what I have to say about my troubled daughter. By the time you walk through that door, there won't be anything left for you. He hung up. I sat frozen in my seat, heart pounding. The city was 20 minutes away. Theodore Whitmore was my last chance, and my father was trying to burn it down before I even arrived. Bennett texted a moment later. Give up already, sis. Dad already called them. Enjoy the bus ride home. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my phone, pressed my forehead against the cold window, and tried to breathe. Sometimes the truths that save you only find you if you stay long enough to hear them, and that's why I hope you'll stay with me through this. 20 minutes later, I stepped off the bus in the city with $43 in my pocket and no idea what was waiting for me. But I was done running. Whatever happened next, I'd face it standing up. The offices of Callaway and Whitmore occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the heart of the city. The lobby alone made me feel small. Marble floors, polished mirrors, a 3-story atrium with suspended sculptures, men and women in tailored suits crossing toward elevators with the kind of purpose I hadn't felt in 18 months. I approached the reception desk, acutely aware of my thrift store blazer and scuffed heels. Colleen Hargrove, I am here to see Theodore Whitmore. The receptionist typed something into her computer. Then she looked up with an expression I couldn't read. Yes, Miss Hargrove, you're expected. A pause. Mr. Whitmore will see you personally in his office, 14th floor. His assistant will meet you. Expected? The word echoed in my head as I rode the elevator in silence. The doors opened onto a reception area that whispered of decades of success. Original artwork, handcrafted furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view that made my breath catch. An assistant in a charcoal dress approached. Miss Hargrove, Mr. Whitmore is waiting. She led me down a hallway lined with photographs, the firm's history, I guessed, and stopped at a heavy oak door. Go right in. He's been expecting you for a long time. A long time. I pushed open the door. Theodore Whitmore was standing by the window when I entered. He was older than I'd imagined. Early 60s, silver hair, the kind of face that belonged on the cover of architecture magazines. His suit was impeccable. His office was larger than my entire apartment. But what struck me most was his expression. He wasn't looking at me like a stranger. He was looking at me like he'd been waiting for this moment for years. Miss Hargrove. His voice was warm. Please, sit down. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, my heart hammering. Mr. Whitmore, I'm not sure why... He held up a hand. Before we begin, I need to give you something. He walked to a safe built into the wall, vintage, polished brass, and entered a combination. This should explain everything. He pulled out a yellowed envelope. I couldn't move. The envelope was thick, sealed with wax that had aged to amber. On the front, in my grandmother's handwriting I would recognize anywhere, were the words, only to be opened when Lorraine Thibault has passed away and her granddaughter Colleen Hargrove comes seeking employment or assistance, L.T. The date beneath it, 12 years ago. I was 15 when she wrote this. Your grandmother, Theodore said softly, placing it in my trembling hands, was the first person who ever believed in me. He sat down across from me. 30 years ago, I was a young architect with a vision and no money. Every bank in the state had rejected me. Lorraine Thibault wrote me a check that saved my career. He paused. She made me promise one thing. She said, "Someday a young woman named Colleen Hargrove will need help. When she comes to you, and she will, give her this envelope." 12 years. He'd been waiting 12 years for me to walk through that door. She told me, he continued quietly, "Someday my granddaughter will need a safe place. When she finds you, give her this. It's the only secret she'll ever need." Grandma. I whispered her name like a prayer, staring at the envelope in my hands. She'd known. 12 years ago she'd known. My hands shook as I broke the wax seal. Inside were 3 items. First, a letter, handwritten on cream-colored stationery, my grandmother's elegant script flowing across the pages. Second, a certificate, official, notarized, bearing legal seals and signatures. I scanned the text and felt the room tilt beneath me. Certificate of Trust Ownership. Beneficiary, Colleen Marie Hargrove. Assets, 2 commercial properties located at 114 Commerce Street and 2847 Riverside Drive, Millhaven County. Irrevocable. Held in trust until beneficiary reaches age 25 or seeks assistance from Theodore Whitmore, whichever occurs first. I read it twice, 3 times. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Your grandmother," explained gently, "didn't want these properties in her name. She put them in trust for you, legally, irrevocably yours. The trust was structured to remain silent until either she passed away or you came to this firm seeking help. She designed it that way." He paused. "She wanted to make sure no one could take it from you, not even your father." The third item was a small leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. I opened it. Inside were notes, dates, observations spanning 3 decades. March 2004. Warren screamed at Suzanne for questioning a business decision. She apologized for an hour. September 2009. Warren refused to attend Colleen's school award ceremony, called it a waste of time for a girl. June 2015. Warren told Colleen her dreams of architecture were impractical. Women don't build things, they support men who do. Page after page. She'd been watching, documenting, preparing. "Your grandmother knew," Theodore said quietly, "exactly what kind of man your father is. She couldn't stop him directly, so she built you an escape route." I was crying now, couldn't stop. Theodore stepped outside to give me privacy. I sat alone in his office, holding my grandmother's letter like it was made of glass. "My dearest Colleen, if you're reading this, then I've left this world and you found your way here. I'm sorry I couldn't give this myself. I watched your mother marry Warren Hargrove. I saw the signs from the beginning. The control, the cruelty disguised as discipline, the way he diminished everyone around him to feel powerful. I begged Suzanne to leave. She refused. I couldn't save my daughter, but I swore I would save you. Those 2 properties are worth more than enough to build your own life. Use them wisely. Build something that belongs to you. And remember this, sweet girl. You don't owe anyone your obedience, not even family, especially not family that treats love like a leash. Live free, Colleen. That's all I ever wanted for you. All my love forever. Grandma." I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. When Theodore returned, I had composed myself. Mostly. My eyes were red, my mascara ruined, but something inside me felt lighter than it had in 18 months. "I have to tell you something," he said. "Your father called me this morning." I went cold. What did he say? The same thing he's apparently told everyone, that you're a thief, that you stole from the business, that I shouldn't trust you. And you? I listened. Theodore folded his hands. And then I looked at the journal your grandmother left, her documentation of his behavior spanning 30 years. And then I looked at the trust certificate that proves you own two of the most valuable commercial properties in Millhaven County. He met my gaze. Your father just tried to slander the woman who owns the land his company has been trying to acquire for the past 5 years. I stared at him. He doesn't know, I whispered, about the properties, about any of this. No, your grandmother was very specific. The trust was sealed. Your name doesn't appear in any public filings. There was no way for him to discover it. So when he called you, he was trying to destroy someone who, on paper, is one of the most significant property owners in his county. Theodore leaned back. I have to admit, I've never seen anything quite like it. I thought about my father, smugly confident that he'd destroyed my last chance, about Bennett's gloating text. They had no idea what was coming. There's something else, Theodore said. Next week, your county is hosting its annual Chamber of Commerce dinner. Your father is being honored as Business Leader of the Year. My stomach clenched. He's been lobbying for this recognition for years, Theodore continued. Every major business figure in the county will be there. He paused. I've been invited as a guest speaker. I'd like you to come with me. Why? Because I think it's time people learned the truth about Warren Hargrove. He watched my face carefully. And about his daughter. I was quiet for a long moment. I don't want revenge, I said slowly. I don't want to humiliate him just to watch him suffer. Theodore nodded, unsurprised. Your grandmother said you'd say that. He smiled gently. This isn't about revenge, Colleen. It's about truth. You've spent 18 months being called a thief, a failure, a disgrace. Your father controls that narrative because no one has challenged it. He stood, walked to the window. The dinner isn't about hurting him. It's about standing in the light. Let people see who you really are, and let your father's lies collapse under their own weight. I thought about it. About 18 months of shame. About the gas station, about Bennett's photo, about my mother's silence. Yes, I said finally. I'll be there. My father was about to be honored as the county's Business Leader of the Year. He had no idea his daughter held the one secret that could undo everything he'd built. Can you imagine what happens next? The Millhaven Grand Ballroom had been decorated like something from a magazine. Crystal chandeliers hung from 30-foot ceilings. A string quartet played in the corner. Waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The guest list read like a directory of everyone who mattered in the county. Executives, politicians, developers, old money and new. I watched from a private room upstairs, waiting for my cue. Theodore's team had helped me prepare. Nothing ostentatious. A simple navy dress, elegant but understated. Pearl earrings, my hair swept back. I looked professional, competent. I didn't look like someone who'd been working the graveyard shift at a gas station 3 days ago. Through the window, I spotted my family. My father entered first, chest puffed, surveying the room like he owned it. His charcoal suit probably cost more than I'd made in 6 months at the Crossroads. My mother trailed behind in designer silk, smiling her perfect smile. Bennett was checking his phone, looking bored. They had no idea what was coming. I watched my father work the room, shaking hands, laughing too loud, positioning himself near the stage where he'd receive his award. He was trying to catch Theodore's eye, angling for attention. He thought tonight was his coronation. Ready? Theodore's assistant appeared beside me. I touched my grandmother's letter in my clutch. Ready. Theodore took the microphone as the crowd gathered. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us at this year's Chamber of Commerce dinner. I couldn't hear most of his speech through the door, fragments about community, business excellence, the values that built this county. Then his voice shifted. Before we present tonight's award, I'd like to introduce someone special, someone whose story represents the values we claim to honor: integrity, perseverance, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. The assistant touched my arm. That's your cue. I stepped through the side door and into the ballroom. 200 faces turned towards me. I walked steadily, head high, towards the small stage where Theodore waited. My heels clicked against the marble. The navy dress caught the light from the chandeliers. I didn't look at my father. Not yet. But I felt the moment he saw me. A sharp intake of breath somewhere to my left, a muttered curse, the crash of a champagne glass shattering. That was Bennett. I kept walking. "Ladies and gentlemen," Theodore continued, his voice warm and clear, "please welcome Miss Colleen Hargrove, architect, property owner, and someone this community should have supported instead of shunned." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I reached the stage. Theodore shook my hand, leaning close to murmur, "You're doing great." I turned to face the audience. And finally, I let myself look at my father. Warren stood frozen near the bar, face white, mouth open. My mother had grabbed his arm, her knuckles bloodless. Bennett was staring at the broken glass at his feet like he didn't understand how it got there. I smiled. Not vindictive, not cruel, just calm. Then my father started moving. "Colleen!" His voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. He pushed past a waiter, nearly knocking a tray to the floor. "Security!" he barked, looking around wildly. "Someone get security. This woman shouldn't be here." Theodore stepped forward. "Mr. Hargrove, I'd suggest you lower your voice." "You don't understand." Warren was sputtering now, pointing at me. "She's a thief, I told you this morning. She stole from her own family." "I'm well aware of Miss Hargrove's history. I'm also aware that you've spent the past 18 months contacting every employer in this county to destroy your daughter's career." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "I'm aware that the theft you reference was office supplies she paid back in full within 4 months. And I'm aware that you've been planning to arrange your daughter's marriage to secure a business contract." Warren's face went from red to white. How do you... "Your daughter," Theodore continued, his voice warm and clear, "is not just a guest at this dinner. Colleen Hargrove owns 2 of the most valuable commercial properties in this county, 114 Commerce Street and 2847 Riverside, properties your company has been trying to acquire for years." He turned to me. Her grandmother, Lorraine Thibault, placed those properties in trust for Colleen 12 years ago, legally, irrevocably, protected from people exactly like you. The room erupted in whispers. Warren found his voice. "This is a scam," he shouted, looking around for allies. "This is fraud. My mother-in-law was senile. These documents can't be..." "The documents have been verified by 3 independent attorneys, notarized, sealed, and filed with the state. There's no ambiguity, Mr. Hargrove." I'll sue everyone in this room for..." "For what?" Theodore's voice was soft but carried. "For honoring a legal trust established by your wife's mother." My mother had pushed through the crowd. "Warren," she hissed, tugging at his sleeve. "Everyone is watching, please." He shook her off. "You," he pointed at me, finger trembling. "You ungrateful little... After everything I did for you, I raised you, I fed you, and this is how you repay me?" I said nothing. I let him speak. "I made you pump gas at 3 in the morning. I made sure no one would hire you. And you know what? I do it again, because that's what happens when you disobey. That's what you deserve." Then it stepped forward, face pale. "Dad, stop. We should go. This isn't..." "No." Warren shoved him back so hard Bennett stumbled into a waiter. I watched my brother's expression shift from embarrassment to something darker. He'd spent his whole life as the golden child, and now he was watching his father self-destruct in front of every business contact he'd ever need. "She's nothing," Warren continued, voice rising. "She's always been nothing. Her grandmother was a meddling old woman, and her properties don't change what she is. A thief, a failure, a disgrace to this family." He was panting now, face purple, spittle at the corners of his mouth. No one was looking at me anymore. They were all looking at him. and they finally saw what I'd always known. I stepped forward to the microphone. I didn't come here tonight to humiliate anyone. My voice was steady. I didn't come here for revenge. Warren glared at me, but he'd spent his ammunition. He had nothing left. I came here because I spent 18 months being called a thief, a failure, a disgrace. I was blacklisted from every job in this county. I was mocked for working the only job I could get. I was told that if I wanted to survive, I had to surrender my future to a man who saw me as property. I looked at my father. Not with anger, not with hatred, just clarity. The $500 my father calls theft was money he gave me for office supplies. I paid back every cent. I have every receipt. I paused. But even if I hadn't, even if I'd made a mistake, does that justify 18 months of sabotage? Does that justify trying to arrange my marriage to secure a business deal? Murmurs in the crowd. My grandmother saw what I couldn't. She knew what kind of man my father was. She couldn't save my mother, but she found a way to save me. Not with magic, not with luck, with planning, with legal documents, with love that looked ahead. I turned back to Warren. Dad, I don't hate you, but I'm done. I'm done seeking your approval. I'm done accepting your definition of my worth. My voice didn't waver. This is my boundary. I wish you well, but I will not let you control my life anymore. I stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted in applause. My family left the dinner without another word. I watched them go. My father storming toward the exit, face purple. My mother hurrying after him, head down. Bennett trailing behind, staring at his phone like he could disappear into it. No one stopped them. No one tried to make polite conversation. 200 people watched Warren Hargrove leave in silence. After they were gone, something shifted in the room. The string quartet started up again. Conversations resumed, quieter than before, and then people began approaching me. Business cards, handshakes, quiet apologies. I'm so sorry I believed. If I'd known the truth, your grandmother would be so proud. 1 month later, my life looked completely different. Theodore offered me a position at Callaway and Whitmore, junior architect, real salary, real future. I took it. My office was small, but it had a window and my name on the door. I had an apartment in the city. 1 bedroom, nothing fancy, but mine. Fresh flowers on the kitchen table because I could afford them now. The 2 properties my grandmother left me were worth more than enough to build any life I wanted. But I didn't sell them. Not yet. I wanted to understand what she'd built before I decided what to do with it. My mother called once. "Can we be a family again?" she asked, voice small. "I forgive you, Mom," I said, and I meant it. The anger had faded into something quieter. I'm not coming back. I can't live under those conditions again. She cried. I listened. When she hung up, I felt sad, but not guilty. Bennett texted an apology, generic, probably drafted by a consultant. I responded with, "Thank you," and nothing else. My father never reached out. I didn't expect him to. On a quiet Sunday, I drove to the cemetery where Grandma Lorraine was buried. I brought yellow tulips, her favorites, and sat beside her headstone as the sun began to set. "You saved me," I said softly. "You saw it coming, and you built me a door he couldn't lock." The wind rustled through the trees. "I'll make you proud, Grandma. I promise." I sat there until the stars appeared, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Sometimes I take out her letter and read it again. The paper is soft now from handling, the creases worn thin. "Live free, Colleen. That's all I ever wanted for you." I'm living it, Grandma, every single day. That's my story. No magic, no fairy godmother, just a grandmother who loved me enough to plan ahead, and a granddaughter who kept going even when it seemed hopeless. If you're watching this and you're stuck in a place that feels impossible, trapped by people who should have protected you, I want you to know It can get better. You can get out. But sometimes you have to find the door someone else built for you. And sometimes you have to build your own. Have you ever been saved by someone's love long after they were gone? By one quiet thing they did before you even knew you'd need it?